The next presentation is going to be by the team from Georgia State University, V. Kumar, Amle Sharma, Naveen Dontu, and from Georgia Aquarium, Carrie Roundtree. And their presentation is titled Implementing Integrated Marketing Science Modeling at a Nonprofit Organization, Balancing Multiple Business Objectives at Georgia Aquarium.
Good morning. I'm Carrie Roundtree, the Senior Vice President of Sales and Marketing with the Georgia Aquarium. It's my pleasure today to present with you our findings along with Dr. Kumar from Georgia State University. First, a little bit about Georgia Aquarium. You've just had a very abbreviated tour of the aquarium. The aquarium was founded in 2005 by Bernie Marcus, who was also the founder of Home Depot. And Bernie's generous gift made us the largest aquarium in the world up until last year, when Singapore bypassed us as the largest. But today we're over 100,000 animals, over 5,000 species, and we have over 10 million gallons of water. We've got some really neat animals that you don't find anywhere else in the world. To date, in just 8.5 years, we've hosted over 20 million visitors, so lack of visitorship is not one of our problems, but it's how to maintain that visitorship. Not only have we been a catalyst for development in Atlanta, but also the state of Georgia. It's had a tremendous impact on the state, and it's the most visited aquarium in the United States today. Today we're going to go through our project with you, and this is kind of the format that we will follow. First, we will look at the research and the background and the problem that we discovered and needed to deal with. Secondly, we will look at, is our marketing effort efficient? Or are we doing the best job with the resources that we have available to us? Next, we'll look at who should we be attracting? Do we have the right customers? Next, where are those customers coming from? And then after that, how should we attract them? Are we using the right methodology to talk to our customer base? Next, look at our strategic recommendations. And then finally, what has the overall impact been? So here's our problem. At a mere 8 years old, attendance and revenue have been steadily declining, which is not unusual for an aquarium. After a launch and a few years of maturing, gradually you see attendance and revenue begin to fall. So what happened at Georgia Aquarium is pretty typical about what happens in other aquariums. After a few years, there's a stabilization, and then the status quo prediction can go from there of where do you expect your property, your museum, in this case your aquarium, to go. You see the same in attendance and revenue. That stabilization is there. So we were looking at the status quo, and can we change that status quo in 2013 based on the research that we were able to come up with. Further, as you add additional guests, you get a declining satisfaction rate of the guests that are coming. So how can we make people happy, but also bring more people into the building at the same time. So attendance and revenue come from two primary sources at the aquarium: ticket sales for our visitors and pass holders. Additionally, they spend money once they're in the building. We also have a number of interactive programs that engage the guests personally with animals, whether it be with dolphins, sea otters, actually swimming with those big whale sharks and manta rays that you saw. So there are a number of sources for revenue. We looked at data for 5 years of attendance and where these customers were coming from. And from that, we came up with the following goals. How do we increase attendance and revenue and maintain or grow customer satisfaction both short-term and long-term? But we had some constraints that we as the aquarium placed on the project. First, we were not going to change our ticket price. And two, we knew, based on our experience, that attendance can negatively impact customer satisfaction. Therefore, we looked at objective one. That was to identify and attract the most valuable customer and pass holder in order to manage our acquisition efforts and acquisition cost. And objective two was identify the most effective media and media strategies to spend the limited dollars that we did have to attract our customer. Dr. Kumar will come now and guide you through the process we went through to get to our conclusions.
Thank you, Kerry. So the way the marketing science modeling process was implemented in Georgia Aquarium was very unique. Usually a company implements one set of models, but here we face the challenges of implementing 4 to 5 different kind of marketing science models, and we had to make them all sync and work together. So first, we look at, the first question is, they told us we need to improve our attendance and revenue. So what is the easiest way to look at is that, hey, can you increase the size? Can you increase more species? And so there are a lot of things that we can easily ask questions. So the first question is, given the inputs that they have, are they efficiently operating? And compared to other aquariums, also are they efficiently operating, was the first thing. So we had to resort to marketing science approaches using data envelopment analysis, as well as you have to have competitive analysis to see that are they declining because competition is stealing customers from them. And then in the second phase, we looked at, okay, if we have to attract more customers, more traffic, high-value pass holders, so how do we go about finding them? So we had transaction data for the last 5 years, and obviously we take part of that as an estimation sample and then remaining as a holdout sample to see how we can measure the lifetime value of the pass holders. Build a model and should be able to predict it. So that's what, set of a series. Within this lifetime value model itself, you had 3 sets of models. And so that's the second thing we did. Then the third is the traffic. Where do they come from? We had to do the spatial analysis to see, is the valuable pass holders are coming from one set of area versus the visitors who come just once or twice, where do they come from? So is there some synergy in the sources as to the origin of the zip codes? And finally, to attract them, how do we attract? How much we have to spend in online media, offline media, and within online and offline, how much within each of those media, and also the timing, when to spend. So this was a big challenge for us. We sat down with them and said that, okay, we'll try. And so we built these models, gave a set of strategic recommendations at the end of 2012, early 2013, and they implemented it in all of 2013. They continue to implement it because our analysis and the focus was for both short-term and long-term, and you will see the benefits. So first question is Georgia Aquarium efficiently operating? So in terms of the operational efficiency, here is what the process that you go through. First, you find out what is the problem that they're given, increase attendance and revenue. But if you look at the possible solution, what do they? They have the size of the aquarium, they have the population where the city that they are located, and then the number of species that they have, and the ticket prices. So you can manipulate all these things. But given these inputs, we first start about asking, is Georgia Aquarium efficient with regards to these inputs? And the answer was, yes or no, based on the analysis that we do. And this is good analysis, data envelopment analysis, where it says that, are you efficiently operating or not? So if you're not, it gives you a good variation. If you're efficiently operating, it gives a score of 1 to all the aquariums that are efficiently operating. So you had no and yes. So assuming you're S, operating efficiently, then we have to do super data envelopment analysis. Why is that? Among all the aquariums that score 1, then we need to find dispersion, like is somebody doing much better than the others, and so on. So we did this, and if the answer is no, okay, we'll go and play with the inputs that you have seen there, the size, population, and ticket prices. Ticket prices are not an option, but a species. But if it is no, meaning that if it is yes, then you have, what do you see? You're operating super efficient. And then dead end modification of these inputs are not possible. So this is the first path we had to take, and then this gave us plan B. So this basically set us in a course of action that we are to go about. And if you look at the results of the data envelopment analysis, DEA in short form, and you can see that all the green bars show that the 11 aquariums are 1, scoring 1, so they're all efficiently operating. Then we had to further take these 11 aquariums and do the super DEA, and then you will see that the values range from, like in terms of the dispersion there, 0.88 to 1.96, with Georgia Aquarium scoring, so the mean average is about 1.1, and Georgia Aquarium again at the top there. So the problem here was that, okay, here are the inputs that we talked about, and the inputs were selected based on whether we can compare all the aquariums, 19 aquariums, we need to have similar inputs, and also the management, which said that these are the parameters that we have to play with. So the unique problem is already super efficient, it cannot be modified, so where can we find additional people, additional money? And this is a big challenge. So what about competition? So the logical question is, can we steal from competition, or are they stealing from us? So if you look at who are the major competitors in this market, then you will see that attendance of Georgia Aquarium and its competitors are positively associated with Coca-Cola. The World of Coke Museum is adjacent to the Georgia Aquarium, so people come there and come also here. And there is Turner Field is very close by, so they also go to the baseball game and then they come to the aquarium, and they also have joint ticket promotions. So therefore, if you look at the Braves, there is synergistic opportunity with both the Braves and the Coca-Cola. So what we learn from competition is that they are not driving customers away from Georgia Aquarium, if in fact they can only contribute to the Georgia Aquarium. So then who should we attract? So you have, as the CMO of Georgia Aquarium mentioned, we have two primary sources, one the visitors and the other one is the pass holders. Who are the valuable pass holders? How do we find them? So we have to again resort to CLV kind of modeling here. In this case, pass holders lifetime net revenue modeling. And the net revenue is whatever the money they give us minus the marketing cost at the individual level. So we have this piece of information. And to compute this, you had the probability model of renewal, and then if they renew, how much revenue they are likely to give, and how much marketing cost is involved. So we had this model, and we had 5 years of data. We used the first 3 years of data, and then used the last 2 years as holdout to predict. And we were successful. If you look at the hit ratio in terms of whether they are likely to renew the pass or not, you got it with the 82-83% hit ratio. And then in the validation sample, in the 2 years holdout, you had the 81%. Similarly, how much revenue they are likely to give, you see this about 20% in terms of the MAPE here. And in terms of the validation, we had slightly higher, about 28%, and that's because there were some new customers coming in and gave. So we did not remove the outliers here. We included it so that in the interest of full disclosure here. And how were the pass holders distributed in terms of the value? You see there is a super high value, the first segment, and they give profits of about $2,000 a year, which you see, it's identified super high PLNR segment. And then you add the high and the medium and the low and sometimes negative also. So what drives somebody to be a super high PLNR? I mean, there are a lot of value to knowing this because as you will hear later from the CMO of Georgia Aquarium that this segment is so disproportionate in terms of their revenue contribution, they can also add value otherwise. So we went about identifying the drivers. So if you look at the drivers, first set of drivers, you had who is going to, say, renew the pass next time and how much value they're going to give. Look at the lagged values. So who renewed the passes at the previous time period and 2 time periods ago? And also the usage. Did they use the pass in the previous time period a lot or medium or less versus 3 time periods ago, 2 time periods ago and 3 time periods ago? Then we also looked at one of the drivers as the revenue that they provided in the past and also the number of pass holders in the household. If it is higher, then they are likely to be a high-value pass holder. And then also how frequently they were renewing the passes with the historical data. So these drivers really set us on a course of action to identify from the database, because as you've seen that they had over 20 million visitors. So we advised GA, Georgia Aquarium, to monitor each of these drivers on a dashboard to see how it is fluctuating, because we had is the retention rate improving or is it going down and the revenue spent going up or down and so on. So now that we have identified based on the value, where do they come from in terms of the traffic, the large number of pass holders and the large number of visitors? So we needed to do a spatial analysis to find out that first we looked at the heat map, where they are coming from, the largest concentration. Then we had to isolate and identify that are they coming just one time or multiple times, even as a visitor. So overall, in the integrated spatial analysis, the focus was both on retention as well as acquisition. And so in terms of the source of origin, where they come from, if you look at the visitors, we mapped, based on the analysis, top 50 zip codes in the greater metro area for the visitors. And then we also mapped the top 50 zip codes for the pass holders. So the problem here is that if this 50 doesn't align with the other 50, then you have 100 zip codes that you need to cover, which we could have done. But fortunately for us, there were 40 common zip codes among the top 50 here and the top 50 here. Only 10 were unique to each of those. So what does this give us? This gives us a tremendous opportunity to profile the people there. Who are the visitors? Who are the high-value pass holders? We have profiled them with demographic information based on the origin, where they come from, and the survey data that we collected. And lo and behold, we were able to find information for acquisition strategy too. We were able to find 39 more lookalike zip codes for acquisition. So they don't have to fish in the same pond over, but 39 other zip codes. And it'll take a lot of time to get everybody into that. That's why it's both a long-term and a short-term strategy. That what you see here is the benefit that we provide. So how should they attract? Now that you know where to go and look for them and who to look for, then how you're going to go about using the media. So if you look at the media, they use both online and offline. But the modeling challenges in terms of marketing science is that first you have the interaction effects across this media that you need to model. We take care of that in terms of the nonlinear media mix optimization model. Then you need to account for the endogeneity of this media spend. And if you ask Mr. Carey Roundtree, he will say that, yeah, our media spend this year is a function of how much we spent last year, how much attendance we got. So the classical problem that we face, when in this endogeneity, and we model that endogeneity also using a control function approach, which I'll elaborate in a second. And then, these attractions are all as a seasonality is often there. So we model the seasonality effect also here. So the way the model is specified in a nutshell, there are a lot of details in the paper, but the attendance basically is modeled as a function of ticket price, the customer satisfaction, and then the media spend, then the economy also, how well the economy is going up or down, the competition attendance. So everything that you would see is there. Plus, you see towards the end of the equation some EJT, and that is nothing but the error function that comes because of accounting for endogeneity. What is that? So in the endogeneity model, we take the media spend today as a function of media spend yesterday for the same media as well as for the competing other medias that GA uses, and then the past attendance, and build models and predict the errors. So this is a multiplicative model. So we take the log transformation and then estimate the model. The way we estimate all these models is using Bayesian approach in the R programming, which is all very well documented, and also validated with maximum likelihood estimation to see how robust this estimation process is. So the error that comes out of this log transform model, in the endogeneity model, is taken and put back in the top equation as the error. This is called the control function approach, as Petrain and Train suggested earlier. And in this control function approach, clearly the errors between the actual and predicted and the media spend goes in there. So the equation, the parameter estimates you get are all unbiased. So our model showed here about 75% R square and overall MAPE of about 1.2%. In other words, if the revenue that they are getting is about 82% or the attendance they are getting is 2-3 million, then you will see that how much is the fluctuation. We are able to predict with great accuracy here. So what was our recommendation? If you look across the media in our nonlinear media mix optimization model, this was the average spend that they had in 2011 and 2012. But this is what we recommended based on the model, the elasticities, and the constraints that were provided to us. This is what we recommended. And it is a tough thing for them to go to the board. If you look at the board composition of Georgia Aquarium, pretty much, as he will say, the CEOs of every major company you'll have, Home Depot, Delta Airlines, UPS, and so on. So you'll see every major company. And they asked for additional budget, willingly, unwillingly, they sanctioned it. And this was the actual spend that they had in 2013. And if you look at the way, to recap, what did we do first? So that before we go to quantifying the impact, to recap, the research findings said, is there room for growth in attendance and revenue? And then where do they come from, this high value? And where can we find more of them? And then third is, how should we structure our spending? So if based on all these things, we developed a set of strategic recommendations for Georgia Aquarium. And the recommendations go as follows. First, in terms of the retention strategy, you'll have that we recommended that they target this 40 common zip codes. And then, because you have both the high-value pass holders and high-traffic pass holders as well as visitors. Why? Because we observed both efficiency in spending and effectiveness in spending and effectively targeting them. Then, for acquisition purposes, we also told them target the 39 lookalike zip codes. So we had both acquisitions and retention taken care of, both short run and long run in terms of the net revenue, lifetime net revenue modeling. So how were the recommendations implemented? Here I'm going to tag team with the CMO of Georgia Aquarium to say that what happened, I'll tell you, and then he'll give you an example. We continue to collaborate with the World of Coke as well as Atlanta Braves to bring in more visitors.
VK mentioned earlier that we had a package with the Braves. Not only did we have a package with the Braves, we added a couple of other attractions in the city with the zoo and Six Flags Over Georgia. And we were able to pool our funds together, and fortunately for all of us, we had a very common customer, very same zip code. Our hot maps looked alike, both locally as well as in the regional market. So we were able to combine forces and get a message out 5 times louder than we would have on our own.
For pass holders, again, if you look at it, we implemented a differentiated marketing strategies across the segments. Because if you look at the strategy that you mentioned that came out of phase 1 analysis, for the differentiation strategy on the pass holders revenue, it came from phase 2 lifetime net revenue modeling analysis. And how did you differentiate?
Our pass holders told us they wanted to hear a different message than the general message that was going out to the public. We struggled with how to get that to them, but we came up with the following plan. We were able to go directly into their homes because we knew who they were with a message about the things they wanted to hear after polling them. The other thing that we found as you looked at those high-value pass holders, we now have a base that we're directly soliciting for long-term giving and philanthropy for the aquarium. So not only were we able to talk to them about things they wanted to hear, but now they are a target for long-term givers. We already have had some pretty good success in that area as well.
So in terms of other recommendations which were jointly implemented for both the visitors and the pass holders, we suggested implemented softer strategies and tactics for crowd management and wait time activities.
Customer satisfaction is key for us in making sure that while we're increasing attendance, we're also making the customer happy. So we implemented an entertainment department. That entertainment department, especially on busy days, is very active in keeping our guests occupied until they're able to get into the building, whether it be jugglers or singers or our mascots parading every half hour. We are concentrating our efforts to make sure that the guests, before they get in to see the animals, are being well entertained, but also educated on what they're about to see.
And then in terms of refocused media spend modeling, we told them how much to spend across media, when to spend also.
Again, we took our media, placed it into those zip codes that were most productive, and made sure we had very little waste, but also with a message that the folks in those neighborhoods wanted to hear. We were able to target directly by TV cable buys into individual homes, the same with our online buys, and also place billboards effectively in the markets where we had not been before but were lookalikes for us.
And finally, in terms of media scheduling,
we cranked up our media 2 weeks early based on our seasonality and ran it a week longer. Consequently, we got a much more elongated impact from that media spend rather than just a big hit for a couple of weeks and passing by. We now stretch what used to be a 2 or 3 week campaign into a 6 or 7 week campaign. And with the additional dollars, we're able to do that very effectively, and we saw great results. The results that we saw have been pretty phenomenal. We were looking at a status quo prediction if we didn't do anything, of staying flat or actually declining. Based on the predictions from the original work that we did, we said, well, we could probably increase some, 7 or 8%. The actual, we saw a 10% increase in attendance. So we were very pleased with that. That translated almost identically into the revenue side of the model. We said status quo, we would decrease. We projected 8 to 9% and actually came up with a 12% increase in revenue during 2013. Looking at the customer experience side of things, we also saw some really interesting trends. The big benchmark average are those 19 aquariums referred to. And what we saw first in our overall visitor satisfaction, we went up 3%. In our purchases in our cafe and gift shop, we also saw significant increases. And then perceived admission value went up, which is not easy when you're raising prices. And last but not least, the likelihood to return went up significantly. So from our perspective, we have gotten great results. And we think that these great results are transportable and can really be used across all phases of our industry, whether it be zoos, aquariums, whether it be museums, and our board of directors, in fact, several serve on other boards and have asked us, can we use this? And of course, VK, I'm sure, will be willing. But we think that you can measure the relative efficiency of your organization with this model very effectively. We think that effective targeting strategies certainly came out of this study and enabled us to take our dollars and make it work much harder for us. We know that through the spatial analysis, we were able to take our media and place it effectively and make it work harder for us. The media, optimizing our media investments in the different channels was very effective. That certainly is transportable. And the acquisition efforts, the cost of those acquisition efforts were reduced dramatically. So yes, we think it's very transportable. We think it's an outstanding opportunity for anyone in the not-for-profit world, even the for-profit world, to look at as a model. So today, again, it's been my pleasure to present with Dr. Kumar and his team. You did outstanding work, and even though his boss is on our board, we actually had to pay him too, so it was fun that way as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for an outstanding presentation. I'm going to start with something that actually is close to my own heart, and that relates to the customer satisfaction, market share kind of problem you have. You're not alone in the aquarium business. Most retailers find that their busiest stores have the lowest satisfaction. Why? Because the crowds happen. I'm curious. Right now, it's because you talked strictly about the outside of the entryway as being the big issue and that increased satisfaction. But at some point, the crowd is going to ultimately override that piece. So think of it as a toy store. They might have people entertaining at the Superstore Toys R Us in New York City, but at some point the crowd is so large that it's not fun for the children anymore. At what point do you see that happening, and how are you going to be able to control for that?
We have seen that as an issue really since day one, and the way we control that is twofold. One, we do the entertainment inside the building as well as out, whether it be with our mascots or singers that are part of our dolphin show. The bigger issue, though, is controlling access so that we don't overload or oversell a particular time slot, and we're able to control flow in and out of the building, more so in the building than out of the building. But we have a maximum number that we allow in the building at any point in time, so we're able to structure our sales process, ticket selling process, so that we don't oversell a time period and get too many people in the building at one time. In order to accommodate what we've been able to do or make some adjustments in hours of operation, stretching those hours of operation, and also out of this study we were able to come up with some packaging where we, during the summer, were able to entice 80,000 people to come basically from 6 o'clock to closing with a big discount. So by changing pricing on tickets, changing timing on tickets, we're able to spread out that crowd, especially in the summer months. For example, the month of July, we do 320,000 people in a month. So it was imperative to us to spread those out, and we were able to do that through pricing and changing hours and moving those people to later in the day or early in the day based on a more dynamic pricing model.
I had a related question. I heard what you said, but I was not sure because our focus is on the study. What did the study reveal about negative externalities and congestion and those sorts of things, and how did that impact any of the actions that you took?
So we had there's both a qualitative and quantitative components to this. In the survey they had done every year with customer base, there are a lot of inputs given to that went into the model in terms of the externalities. The externalities, the way, if I interpret your question correctly, comes from both what outside the control of this Georgia Aquarium is. Am I interpreting it correctly, your question? Or?
No, I'm just curious as to what did the study reveal? The models that you implement and all of those things. What did they say about?
What the model shows is day of week and attendance are directly related. So we were able to look at every day of the week basically and tell customer satisfaction by day of the week, by time of day, and from that apply those to the entertainment ideas, to the pricing ideas, to the spreading out the attendance ideas.
And I also have a related question, and it was interesting that the question that Tim asked, he thought of a retailer, facing similar problems. So, given that this is a museum, and given that context, I thought you would be looking at something more than revenue and attendance in terms of the outcomes that you would look at, right? But I was not sure, how again, the model informed, those sorts of things, education or any other goals that the museum might have.
Yeah, your education.
Well, the education side is certainly front and center for what we do as a business. When the aquarium was founded, Mr. Marcus had 4 basic principles in his mind. One, we had to be the best entertainment venue in the world. Following that would be education, research, and conservation. Education, research, and conservation cannot support themselves. So in order to be the best in the world at those 3, being the best in entertainment is where we needed to be, so that the revenue was there to be able to not only operate a great and efficient facility, but then have the dollars to flow into the other 3. And that's really why this study was done, is because we saw the entertainment side, which relates to ticket sales and revenue, declining, and we didn't want to see that decline because we wanted to continue to build the education, the research, and the conservation side of the aquarium.
Yeah, just to add to that, in the model itself, at each stage of the model, we had this qualitative, which you call it survey-based information that was provided to us over time. So we use that as input also. Just because in the final model, because of collinearity, satisfaction was subsuming all the other effects. But yes, as you saw in the last slide, in the overall customer experience factor impact, we had likelihood to return, and how much they are willing to spend, and how much they are satisfied, and are they willing to also refer. All those things were brought in, and we saw this is one of the studies where both quantitatively we saw a bigger impact and qualitative factors also, which when we told them that we can work towards increasing attendance and revenue, but qualitative factors, I don't know, but it also happened very nicely.
There was an acquisition retention component to this, and I may have missed it in the slides. How did that balance out for the 10% increase in attendance? What percentage was driven by the new markets? What percentage was driven by an increase in the pass holder retention, that sort of thing?
We saw an almost equal increase across the board in each of those, which was very satisfying for us to know that while we were focused on the pass holder side and developing the new markets, we saw an across-the-board increase, which was probably the best result we could have seen.
But is there some way you can parcel out the effects of various components? I think building on what Tim is saying, that you have changes in media, you have changes in targeting within known geographies, you have changes in targeting in going after new geographies, etc., etc. So how much each one of them contributed to the results?
A good question. So in this presentation, we didn't isolate it, but based on the elasticities, we can isolate it. And as he was saying, first level acquisition retention have 50% contribution to increase. Then within each of this, the media scheduling, one very good example is that outdoor billboards that were kept initially in the last 3 years, they were kept in high traffic areas, like where cars go quite a bit, in a primary spot. But based on our modeling and analysis, we said that it's not where population is large. You have to put it in place where the potential visitors and the potential pass holders are likely to come from, strategically shift and put it there. And so the entire billboard budget, we moved to the new zip codes and the existing zip codes in those locations as opposed to on major interstate going through Atlanta, and you saw the benefit there.
Not only did we see the benefit in Atlanta for 2014, we've now applied that same methodology to our 7 key outlying markets that are outside of the Atlanta area, and we expect to see the same results.
Last question is going to be a little harder because this is, you got to conceptualize this one because I'm sure the data isn't quite there yet. At some point, you're going to habituate the new market too, the new 39. And how are you planning to prevent the same kind of, you've got a spike, how do you prevent the gradual decline?
In our business, you're always going to see the ebb and flow of attendance. So we know where they are, we know the message they want to hear, so we have to be much more direct in the messaging rather than general in our messaging. So in our television and our radio, we've gone to very retail-oriented messaging versus more image and brand messaging. Brand messaging is still the driver on our billboards, but in every other medium that we're able to use now, it's a very direct message, very retail message about price, about opportunity, about new animal, so that we are talking directly about the things that the customer wants to hear. Will it prevent erosion? Who knows? The other thing that we are fortunate in that our marketplace continues to grow and grow pretty rapidly. We're projected to gain 2 or 3 million people over the next 8 to 10 years, so we'll be talking to those new folks as they come to town as well.
Yeah, and another important point that you raised is the fact that this business, or either it's a zoo or a museum or art exhibition or aquarium, the biggest benefit here is that we go to this place. Why do we go to this place 2 or 3 times a year? Because they have new species, new exhibits, new entertainment inside. So every time we go, the experience varies. So even if the geographical saturation occurs, but the repeat visits keep coming as long as we keep changing the exhibits. And there is a pattern at which they keep doing it. But in the future, definitely at any place, the well dries up. And we need to think of reinventing strategies. But for now, we have both the acquisition and the retention conquered, both short-run and long-term conquered, and both attendance and revenue, as well as which is a quantitative and qualitative factors, which is customer experience factors, also maximized.
There'll be time for 1 or 2 questions from the audience. Are there any questions?
Thank you. My question is that you actually compare your estimation with status quo estimation. I think the fair comparison is that you compare your actual revenue with the revenue from other nonprofits or other aquariums at the same year.
Yeah,
We actually have those numbers, and we are well above them. But we also have seen, we've seen our revenue increase. We've seen their revenue increase as a function of pricing, much more so than attendance. But if you look at us compared to the other large aquariums in the country, we are, since really day one, have been the leader in both attendance and revenue.
Well, I live in the Atlanta market as well, and I remember in the last few years there's a lot of excitement around, you just mentioned at the end, sort of new species. There's a dolphin show. And so how do you parcel out the increase in attendance from in this case, the marketing message versus just the excitement around sort of the animals and the species, and how you change the sort of the product itself?
We have several strategies. One, a long-term strategy is that every 5 years we're going to do something major to attract the old customer as well as the new customer. The Dolphin Show exhibit was the first example of that, which came on our 5th anniversary. For our 10th anniversary next year, we're taking one of our exhibits, the Georgia Explorer, if you're familiar with it, which depicts the Georgia coast. We will gut it, and it will reopen as a sea turtle exhibit. In between, we try to every year, 2 or 3 times a year, put in new species of fish that have some interest. We also have added each year interaction programs or encounter programs. We now have a total of 5. Each of those have also drawn new attention to the aquarium. So there's an ongoing effort to really about every 90 days have something in the media, something that is truly different and new for you to see.
Yeah, so it's a very good point. So in terms of 2013, there's no major changes made in the aquarium. These are minor changes that they keep making just to communicate, and that is part of the aquarium, that it's very well advertised and so on. So those effects are already factored in the historical data as the changes due to those 90-day changes. So that is accounted for in the model, is reflected. So we can confidently say, and you can observe, that there was no something newly brought in that kicked it up or down. It's nothing like that. So
we also have a changing exhibit area, which we change every year with a temporary type exhibit. The other piece of our marketing effort that is now in its third year is we have our own television show, which is nationwide, Saturday mornings on ABC, starring Jeff Corwin. It's called Ocean Mysteries with Jeff Corwin from Georgia Aquarium. That has, we've seen a great impact from that as well, moving our national attendance outside of the southern region from about 13% to 18% in 2.5 years.
Thank you very much.